She covered her tattoos, removed her moles. She didn't know was a huge secret, an ancient blessing passed down to her, only to replace her twin sister and steal everything she'd ever worked for, including her man and kids. Hello guys, welcome to my channel where interesting stories of family betrayal, twisted secrets and shocking karma are told. This one was wild and I hope you enjoy it. Drop a comment if you were Amina or Aisha. What would you have done in such a situation? As sisters, would you have forgiven each other? Let's dive straight in. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, share it with your friends and drop your thoughts in the comment section below. Amina stood in front of the full-length mirror in the cramped bathroom of her Lagos apartment, studying the stranger staring back at her. 5 years in a European prison had carved out the softness from her face, replaced it with sharp angles and cold eyes. Her fingers traced the faded ink on her left shoulder, a phoenix rising from flames, a tattoo she'd gotten during her reckless 20s. Next to it, on her collarbone, were 3 small moles arranged like stars. Those moles had been there since birth. Her grandmother once said they were a mark of favor, a blessing from their ancestors. Amina had laughed it off back then. Now, standing here with a suitcase full of desperation and a heart hardened by betrayal, she saw them differently, as identifiers, things that made her Amina, the ex-convict, the failure, the shame of the family. She picked up her phone and scrolled through her sister's Instagram page. Aisha's life was a glossy highlight reel. Designer handbags, family vacations to Dubai and the Maldives, a mansion in Lekki with floor-to-ceiling windows, and a husband who looked at her like she hung the moon. Kunle, successful, handsome, devoted. They had 2 beautiful children, a boy and a girl, who attended the best international schools. Amina's jaw tightened. They used to be identical. Same face, same body, same everything. But somewhere along the line, their lives had split into 2 different universes. While Aisha climbed the ladder of success, Amina had tumbled into the gutter. Bad decisions, worse company, a drug trafficking charge that landed her in a Belgian prison while Aisha was building an empire back home. Her mother died of a heart attack 2 years into Amina's sentence. Aisha never sent money for lawyers, never visited, never wrote. When Amina was finally deported back to Nigeria 3 months ago, broken and penniless, Aisha's response was cold. I can't be associated with your mess. I've worked too hard to build my reputation. That was the moment Amina decided. If Aisha wanted to pretend she didn't exist, then fine. She'd become Aisha instead. The plan was insane, but Amina had nothing left to lose. She spent weeks studying her sister's mannerisms, her voice, the way she signed her name, her favorite phrases. Identical twins had advantages. They shared DNA, the same facial structure, the same fingerprints in essence. All Amina needed was to erase the differences. She booked an appointment at a discreet clinic in Ikeja. Laser tattoo removal was painful, but she gritted her teeth through 6 sessions until the phoenix was nothing but a shadow on her skin. Then came the moles. The doctor had hesitated when she asked. "Are you sure?" he asked, peering at the 3 tiny marks. "I'm sure," Amina said firmly. The procedure was quick. Local anesthetic, a small blade, stitches that would dissolve in a week. When she looked in the mirror afterward, the moles were gone. She felt lighter somehow, freer. She didn't feel the sudden emptiness that had opened up inside her, like a door closing on something ancient and sacred. She convinced herself it was just superstition. Now, 8 weeks later, Amina was ready. She'd done her homework. She knew Kunle traveled frequently for work. He was scheduled to fly to South Africa for a 2-week business conference. She knew Aisha's routine, her security codes, her children's schedules, everything. She'd hired someone to watch the house, to map out the blind spots. And she knew Aisha's biggest secret. Aisha wasn't home as often as Instagram suggested. In fact, she spent most of her time at a private facility in Abuja, a high-end wellness retreat that was really a rehab center. Aisha had a prescription pill addiction that she hid from everyone, even Kunle. She discovered this from a private investigator she'd hired with the last of her savings. The plan was elegant in its cruelty. Aisha would go to Abuja for her regular 2-week business retreat. Amina would slip into her place. She'd be the wife, the mother, the successful woman everyone admired. And if she played it right, she'd never have to leave. The night before the switch, Amina sat in her dingy apartment and rehearsed one last time. She practiced Aisha's laugh, light, controlled, never too loud. She practiced her smile, warm but measured, the smile of someone who'd learned to guard her joy. She went through Aisha's emails, her voice messages, every detail. "You can do this," she whispered to her reflection. "You deserve this." The next morning, Amina waited outside Aisha's favorite spa in Victoria Island, knowing she had an appointment. When Aisha emerged, glowing and refreshed, Amina stepped into her path. Aisha froze. For a moment, they stood facing each other. Two identical women, one polished and perfect, the other rough around the edges. "Amina!" Aisha's voice was barely a whisper, her face drained of color. "Hello, sister," Amina said softly. "We need to talk." They went to a quiet cafe nearby. Aisha wouldn't stop staring, her hands trembling around her coffee cup. "I can't believe you're back," Aisha said. "You look different." "Prison changes people," Amina replied with a bitter smile. "What do you want?" Aisha's tone was careful, controlled. "I need help, money, just enough to get back on my feet." Aisha sighed, reaching for her purse. "I'll give you 50,000 naira. That's all I can spare right now." Amina watched her sister pull out the crisp bills, and something inside her snapped. 50,000 naira. Pocket change to Aisha, an insult to Amina. "Thank you," Amina said sweetly, taking the money. They parted ways, and Aisha never suspected a thing. She didn't know that Amina had slipped a tracker into her bag. She didn't know that every word of their conversation had been recorded. She didn't know that in 72 hours, when she left for Abuja, her entire life would be stolen. Amina returned to her dingy apartment and stared at the money on her table. Then she looked at the photo on her phone. Aisha's perfect family, her perfect life. "Soon," she whispered, "it will all be mine." What Amina didn't know, couldn't have known, was that the moles she'd removed weren't just birthmarks. They were a spiritual anchor, a protection her grandmother had prayed over when the twins were born. And by removing them, she'd severed something fundamental. The blessing that was meant for her had already been transferred, but not in the way she thought. The morning Aisha left for Abuja, Amina watched from across the street as her sister's driver loaded luggage into the black Range Rover. Aisha kissed her children goodbye at the door. 7-year-old Damilola and 5-year-old Teniola, then slid into the back seat with her phone pressed to her ear, already absorbed in her fabricated business world. Kunle had left 2 days earlier for South Africa. Perfect timing. Amina waited 30 minutes after the car disappeared, then made her move. She'd already duplicated Aisha's access card using information from a security guard she'd bribed. The gate opened smoothly. She walked up the stone pathway like she owned it, because in her mind, she already did. The housekeeper, Mrs. Okonko, opened the door and nearly dropped her tray. "Madam, you are back, but you just left." Amina smiled warmly, channeling every ounce of Aisha's graceful composure. "I forgot some important documents. The traffic was terrible, so I decided to just come back and work from home today. Please don't tell the children. I want to surprise them when they return from school." Mrs. Okonko looked confused, but nodded. "Of course, ma. Should I prepare your lunch?" "Yes, thank you. The usual." Amina had no idea what the usual was, but she'd figure it out. She walked through the house slowly, touching everything: the marble countertops, the imported furniture, the massive television in the living room. She ran her fingers along the piano nobody played, the artwork that cost more than she'd earned in her entire life. This was wealth. Real, tangible wealth. She climbed the spiral staircase to the master bedroom and stood in the doorway, taking it all in. The king-sized bed with silk sheets, the walk-in closet that could fit her entire apartment, the ensuite bathroom with a jacuzzi tub. Amina opened Aisha's closet and pulled out dress after dress. Gucci, Prada, Valentino. She tried on a cream-colored pantsuit that fit perfectly, then sat at Aisha's vanity and applied her sister's expensive makeup. When she looked in the mirror, Aisha stared back. "Perfect," she whispered. The children came home at 3 o'clock, bursting through the door with their nanny, Auntie Bimpe. "Mommy!" Teniola squealed, running toward Amina with open arms. Amina's heart clenched. She knelt down and caught the little girl in a hug, breathing in her baby shampoo scent. Damilola was more reserved, watching her carefully. "I thought you went to Abuja," he said suspiciously. "Change of plans, darling. I missed you too much." Over the next few days, Amina settled into Aisha's life with frightening ease. She learned the children's routines, their favorite meals, their bedtime rituals. She responded to Aisha's emails and text messages, maintaining the facade. She even FaceTimed with Kunle in South Africa, keeping the calls brief and blaming poor connection when he tried to linger. "Is everything okay?" Kunle asked during one call. "You seem different." "Just tired," Amina replied with Aisha's practice smile. "You know how the kids are." He laughed. "Can't wait to be home. I miss you." "Miss you too," Amina said, and was disturbed by how easily the lie rolled off her tongue. The wealth was intoxicating. She shopped online using Aisha's credit cards, charging thousands without a second thought. She drove the Range Rover to high-end restaurants where waiters knew Mrs. Oladele by name. She attended a charity gala where Lagos's elite mingled and nobody questioned her identity. At night, she lay in Aisha's bed, surrounded by luxury, and felt a satisfaction she'd never known. This was what she deserved. This was justice for all the years she'd suffered while Aisha thrived. But there were moments, small, unsettling moments, when things felt wrong. The children sometimes stared at her strangely, as if sensing something off. Damilola asked once, "Mommy, why did you stop singing in the morning?" Amina hadn't known Aisha sang. She'd laughed it off, claiming a sore throat. Then there were the dreams, violent, vivid dreams where she was drowning in darkness, reaching for something just out of grasp. She'd wake up gasping, drenched in sweat, with a strange emptiness in her chest, right where the moles had been. She ignored it, pushed it down, focused on maintaining the illusion. 2 weeks passed. Kunle returned from South Africa, and Amina's heart raced as she heard his car pull into the driveway. This was the real test. A husband would know his wife intimately. If anyone could detect the switch, it would be him. He walked through the door, dropped his bags, and pulled her into a deep kiss. "God, I missed you," he murmured against her lips. Amina kissed him back, trying to match Aisha's rhythm, her passion. That night, in the darkness of the master bedroom, Kunle made love to her, and Amina played her part flawlessly. Afterwards, as he slept beside her, she stared at the ceiling and felt a twisted triumph. "I did it. I completely replaced my sister." But the next morning, something shifted. Kunle was distant at breakfast, watching her over his coffee cup. "You okay?" Amina asked. "You didn't do the thing," he said quietly. "What thing?" "The thing you always do. After you always trace my jawline 3 times and kiss my forehead. Last night, you just rolled over." Amina's blood ran cold, but she forced a laugh. "Baby, I was exhausted. You wore me out." He studied her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Yeah, maybe." But he saw the doubt in his eyes. That afternoon, while Kunle was at work, Amina decided to search the house more thoroughly. She needed to know everything about Aisha, every detail, every secret, if she was going to maintain this life permanently. She went through drawers, closets, files, and then, hidden in the back of Aisha's home office, behind a false panel in the bookcase, she found it. A leather-bound journal. Amina's hand trembled as she opened it. The first entry was dated 15 years ago, when Aisha and Amina were 20 years old. "Grandmother told me about the blessing today. She said the moles on Amina's collarbone are a mark of ancestral favor, that Amina was chosen to carry the family's prosperity forward. She'll have wealth, love, protection, everything." Amina's heart pounded. She flipped forward. "I can't accept this. Why should Amina get everything just because of some birthmarks? I've worked harder, I'm smarter, I deserve more. Another entry months later. I found grandmother's old book of prayers and rituals. There's a way to transfer blessings. It requires sacrifice, intention, and the right timing. If Amina doesn't know the value of what she carries, maybe it's not meant for her. Amina's vision blurred. She kept reading, her breath coming in short gasps. I did it. During the new moon, I performed the ritual. I called on the ancestors to transfer Amina's blessing to me. I offered my loyalty, my dedication, my promise to honor what she'd waste. 3 days later, I met Kunle. 3 months later, his business deal went through. 6 months later, we were engaged. Everything I have, the house, the money, the family, it was supposed to be hers. But she was reckless, stupid, chasing fast money and bad men. She didn't deserve it. I took what was rightfully wasted on her. The journal slipped from Amina's hands and hit the floor. Her sister hadn't just abandoned her. Aisha had stolen her destiny. Every success Aisha enjoyed, every blessing, every bit of wealth, it had been meant for Amina. The moles weren't just marks, they were a spiritual inheritance, and Aisha had performed a ritual to reroute it to herself. Amina's entire life, the bad decisions, the terrible luck, the prison sentence, had it all been the result of losing that protection? And now, by removing the moles, had she severed the last thread connecting her to what was rightfully hers? Amina sat on the floor of Aisha's office, surrounded by stolen luxury, and felt true fear. Because if Aisha could steal her blessing once, what would happen now that Amina had stolen her life? Amina couldn't sleep that night. She lay beside Kunle, listening to his steady breathing, the journal's words burning in her mind like acid. Every moment of her ruined life suddenly made sense. The string of bad luck, the betrayals, the way opportunity seemed to slip through her fingers like water. It hadn't been her fault. It had been theft, spiritual theft. Her sister had prayed away her destiny. The rage that filled her was cold and absolute. She thought she was taking revenge by stealing Aisha's life, but now she understood she was simply reclaiming what had always belonged to her. This house, this family, this wealth, it should have been hers from the beginning. But something nagged at her. The emptiness in her chest had grown since reading the journal. It felt like a void, a hollow space where something essential used to live. And the dreams were getting worse. Last night, she dreamt of her grandmother standing in darkness, weeping, reaching toward her with gnarled hands. "You've cut the thread," her grandmother had whispered. "You've severed what bound us to you." Amina had woken up choking. The next morning, she made a decision. If Aisha could perform rituals, so could she. She needed to understand what had been done and how to reverse it, or better yet, how to make the transfer permanent. She began researching, diving into the same spiritual texts and ancestral practices Aisha had clearly studied. What she found chilled her. The blessing wasn't just about prosperity. It was about protection, guidance, spiritual covering. The moles had been a physical anchor for that covering, marked by prayers from 7 generations of women in their family. By removing them, Amina hadn't just erased an identifier. She disconnected herself from her lineage. And according to what she read, when a blessing is stolen through ritual, it becomes unstable. It must be maintained through continual sacrifice and right living. If the thief acts against the principles of the blessing, greed, betrayal, deception, the blessing begins to corrupt. Amina slammed the book shut. She didn't want to think about corruption or consequences. She wanted what was hers. Meanwhile, Kunle's suspicion was growing. He caught her watching her at odd moments, his brow furrowed. He asked strange questions. "Remember that trip to Calabar for our anniversary? What was the name of that restaurant you loved?" Amina would freeze, guess, and watch his face close off when she got it wrong. The children were changing too. Teniola had become clingy and tearful, crying at night that mommy feels different. Damilola had grown sullen and withdrawn, spending hours in his room. When Amina tried to comfort them, they pulled away. "You smell wrong," Teniola said one evening, her little face scrunched in confusion. "Mommy smells like flowers. You smell like nothing."
Amina's hands trembled as she tucked the girl into bed. It's just a new perfume, sweetheart. But it wasn't. She could feel herself becoming less substantial somehow, as if she were a photocopy slowly fading. Colors seemed duller. Food tasted like ash. The luxury around her felt hollow, meaningless. Then Aisha called. Amina's heart stopped when she saw Aisha's name flash on the phone screen. She'd been monitoring Aisha's messages, responding as needed, but they'd avoided actual phone conversations. Now Aisha was calling the house line and Kunle was standing right there. "Baby, can you get that?" Kunle called from his office. "I'm on a work call." Amina picked up with shaking hands. "Hello? Kunle?" Aisha's voice was sharp, confused. "Why are you answering the house phone? Where is Mrs. Okonkwo?" Amina's mind raced. She pitched her voice lower, mimicking Kunle's tone. "Aisha, this is a bad connection. I can barely hear you." She said, "Where is Mrs. Okonkwo? And why haven't you responded to any of my messages for the past 3 days? I've been trying to reach you." 3 days. Amina had been so absorbed in the journal and her research that she'd forgotten to check Aisha's second phone, the one she used for her rehab facility communications. "Sorry, darling," Amina said, switching back to Aisha's voice, hoping the line was distorted enough. "I've been busy with the children. Everything is fine here." There was a long pause. "That's not Kunle? Who is this?" Amina hung up. Her heart hammered in her chest as she stood frozen in the living room, the phone still in her hand, as panic clawed up her throat. Aisha knew. Somehow she knew. The house phone rang again. Amina ignored it. Then Kunle's cell phone rang, then hers, all of them ringing in a chorus of exposure. Kunle emerged from his office, frowning. "Why is Aisha calling all our phones? What's going on?" "I don't know," Amina said, her voice tight. "Maybe there's something wrong with the network." But Kunle was already answering his phone. "Aisha, baby, calm down. What do you mean someone is in the house? I'm in the house. The kids are fine. What are you talking about?" Amina watched the color drain from his face as he listened. His eyes slowly lifted to meet mine, and in that moment I saw recognition dawn. Not full understanding, not yet, but the beginning of terrible knowledge. "Stay on the line," Kunle said into the phone, his voice deadly calm. He walked toward Amina slowly, like approaching a dangerous animal. "Who are you?" "Kunle, it's me." "Who are you?" he repeated, louder now. Mrs. Okonkwo appeared in the doorway, drawn by the commotion. Amina looked around wildly, trapped. Every exit was blocked, every lie exhausted. And then the front door crashed open. Aisha stood in the threshold, her chest heaving, her hair wild. She must have taken the first flight back from Abuja. Behind her were 2 police officers. For a moment, the sisters stared at each other. Identical faces, identical bodies, but in that moment, completely different people. Aisha's eyes blazed with fury and something else. Hurt, betrayal, recognition of her own sins reflected back. "Amina," Aisha breathed. Kunle's phone slipped from his hand. "What the hell is happening?" The police stepped forward. "Mrs. Oladele, is this the woman who's been impersonating you?" But Aisha didn't answer. She was staring at Amina's collarbone, at the smooth skin where the moles used to be. Her face went slack with shock. "You removed them," Aisha whispered. "Oh God, Amina, you removed the moles." "You stole from me," Amina screamed, all pretense shattering. "You stole my life, my blessing, everything that was supposed to be mine, you took it." "Officers, arrest her," Kunle said, his voice shaking. But Aisha held up a hand. "Wait." She walked toward Amina slowly, her eyes glistening with tears. "You read the journal. Every word. You betrayed me, your own sister." "I was 20 years old and stupid and jealous. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know it would ruin your entire life. By the time I realized what I'd done, it was too late. The blessing had transferred. And you," her voice broke, "you were already spiraling. I watched you make terrible choices and I told myself it wasn't my fault, that you'd have done it anyway." "But it was your fault." Amina's tears came now, hot and furious. Every single thing that went wrong, every door that closed, every betrayal, it was because you stole my protection. "I know," Aisha cried now too. "I know, and I've lived with that guilt every single day. Why do you think I developed an addiction? Why do you think I can't sleep without pills? The blessing was never meant for me, Amina. It's been poisoning me from the inside. Everything I've built feels empty. My marriage is a performance. My success tastes like ash." Kunle stared at his wife. What are you talking about? What blessing? What did you do? But the sisters only had eyes for each other. You destroyed me, Amina whispered. And you just destroyed yourself, Aisha said, looking at the bare skin on Amina's collarbone. By removing the moles, you didn't just erase evidence. You cut yourself off from our ancestors completely. There's no blessing to reclaim now, Amina, for either of us. The room seemed to vibrate with tension. Mrs. Okonkwo had gathered the children and taken them upstairs. The police waited. Kunle stood frozen, trying to comprehend the impossible. And Amina felt it, the final thread snapping. The emptiness in her chest expanded until it consumed everything. She looked around at the house she'd stolen, the life she tried to claim, and realized with horrifying clarity that she lost everything. Not because Aisha had taken it, but because in trying to steal it back, she destroyed the very thing that would have allowed her to rebuild.
Police moved to handcuff Amina, but Aisha stopped them again. "Give us a moment," she said. "Please, just 5 minutes." The officers exchanged glances, but stepped back. Kunle looked like he wanted to protest, but something in Aisha's face silenced him. He retreated to the hallway, leaving the sisters alone in the sprawling living room that had become a battlefield. Amina sank onto the cream-colored sofa, all fight drained from her. She felt hollowed out, like a shell of a person. Aisha sat across from her, and for a long moment, neither spoke. "I checked myself into rehab because I couldn't live with what I'd done," Aisha finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Every pill I took was trying to numb the guilt. Every success felt like stolen goods. I kept telling myself I'd worked hard for everything, that I'd earned it, but deep down, I knew the truth." "Then why didn't you tell me?" Amina's voice was raw. "Why didn't you confess? Try to make it right." "Because I'm a coward," Aisha's tears fell freely now. "And because I didn't know how to undo it. I searched for years, Amina. I consulted priests, prophets, traditional healers. They all said the same thing. Once a blessing is transferred through ritual, it can only be restored through genuine sacrifice and ancestral forgiveness. Not just words, real sacrifice." "What kind of sacrifice?" Aisha's laugh was bitter. The person who stole the blessing has to give up everything they gained from it, willingly, completely. "I would have to leave Kunle, give up my businesses, abandon this life and return to nothing, start over with nothing. And even then, there's no guarantee the ancestors would restore what was taken." Amina stared at her sister. "So you chose to keep it all, to let me suffer?" "Yes," Aisha's voice broke. "I chose wrong. Every single day I chose wrong. And when you went to prison, I told myself it was your own fault for getting involved with those people. I sent money to your account. Did you know that? Every month for 5 years, I sent money." Amina had known. Anonymous deposits that kept her commissary account funded, that paid for the few comforts available in that hellhole. She'd never known who sent them. "Blood money," Amina spat. "Yes, blood money, because I'm a thief and a coward, but I couldn't let you starve." Aisha leaned forward, her eyes desperate. "But Amina, what you did, removing the moles, those marks were consecrated before we were born. Grandmother anointed them with oils and prayers from 7 generations. They were your connection to our lineage, your spiritual umbilical cord." "I know that now," Amina said. Do you really understand what you've done?" Aisha's voice rose with urgency. "The blessing I stole was poisoning me because it wasn't mine. But you've severed yourself completely. No protection, no guidance, no ancestral covering. You are spiritually naked, Amina, exposed to everything." As if to punctuate her words, Amina felt a wave of cold wash over her. The room seemed to darken at the edges. She wrapped herself around her, suddenly freezing despite the Lagos heat. "What's happening to me?" she whispered. Aisha's face crumpled. The consequences. When you remove what the ancestors placed, you don't just lose blessings. You lose protection from curses, from attacks, from spiritual warfare. And when you compound that by trying to steal someone else's life through deception, she couldn't finish.
Kunle appeared in the doorway. His face was hard, unreadable. Aisha, we need to talk. Now, about everything. I know, Aisha said, standing. She looked at Amina one last time. I'm going to tell him everything. The ritual, the blessing, all of it. And then I'm going to do what I should have done 15 years ago. What's that? Amina asked. Give it back. Kunle's eyes widened. Give what back? Aisha, what are you talking about? But Aisha had already turned to the police officers. I'm not pressing charges. This is a family matter. Please go. Ma'am, this woman committed identity theft, fraud. I'm not pressing charges, Aisha repeated firmly. She's my sister. This is between us. The officers left reluctantly. Kunle followed Aisha to his office, and Amina could hear raised voices, disbelief, anger. Amina sat alone in the living room, feeling herself unravel thread by thread. Mrs. Okunko brought her water, her face kind despite everything. Drink, my dear. Amina drank. The water tasted like nothing. An hour later, Aisha emerged from the office alone. Her face was swollen from crying, but there was a strange peace in her eyes. Kunle is furious, she said simply. He doesn't understand about the blessing, about any of this. He thinks we are both crazy, but I told him everything. About the ritual, about the guilt, about the addiction. She paused. He wants a separation. Time to think. I'm sorry, Amina said, and was surprised to find she meant it. Don't be. I've been living a lie. Maybe this is my consequence. Aisha sat beside her. But Amina, listen to me. We need to go home. Home? To the village, to grandmother's compound. Her shrine is still there, maintained by Aunt Folake. If there's any chance of fixing this, of restoring what was broken, it has to happen there. Amina wanted to refuse. The village held nothing but poverty and bad memories. But the emptiness inside her was growing, consuming her. She was disappearing, she realized, becoming less real by the hour. Okay, she whispered. They left that night, driving in silence through dark highways to the ancestral village in Osun State. The compound was exactly as Amina remembered. Mud walls, corrugated iron roofs, the ancient Iroko tree where their grandmother used to pray. Aunt Folake was waiting, as if she'd known they were coming. She was ancient now, her face a map of wrinkles, but her eyes were sharp. The thief and the severed one, she said in Yoruba. I've been dreaming of you both. They explained everything. Aunt Folake listened without interruption, nodding occasionally. When they finished, she sighed deeply. Your grandmother wept in my dreams. She saw what you both would do. She tried to warn me, but I didn't listen. She looked at Aisha. You must return everything, not just words. Everything, the wealth, the status, the life you built on stolen blessing. You must become nothing again. Aisha nodded. I will. And you, Aunt Fonake turned to Amina, you must forgive, not just with words, with your heart. You must release the anger, the bitterness, the desire for revenge. Only then can the ancestors consider restoring what was cut. That's all? Amina's voice was sharp with disbelief. I just forgive and everything is fixed? No, nothing. The moles cannot be restored. Your physical connection is severed forever. But spiritual connection can be rebuilt through humility, forgiveness, and right living. It will take years, maybe your whole life, and even then, you may never receive what was originally meant for you. The unfairness of it made Amina want to scream, but she was so tired, so empty. That night, they performed a ritual at their grandmother's shrine. Aisha brought documents, deeds to properties, bank statements, business papers. She laid them at the shrine and renounced them all. She spoke aloud her confession, her theft, her betrayal. She wept and begged forgiveness from their ancestors, from their grandmother's spirit, from Amina. Amina watched her sister strip away everything, becoming small and vulnerable, and felt something shift in her chest. Not feeling the emptiness, not yet, but loosening the knot of rage that had lived there for so long. When Aunt Folake turned to her, Amina closed her eyes and spoke the words she never thought she'd say. I forgive you. She said it again and again until it started to feel true. The ritual lasted until dawn. When the sun rose, both sisters were exhausted, covered in clay and palm oil, their voices hoarse from prayer. Nothing dramatic happened. No lightning, no visions, just the quiet morning sounds of the village waking up. But Amina felt lighter somehow. The emptiness was still there, but it no longer felt like drowning. Over the following months, everything changed. Aisha divorced Kunle and signed over everything in the settlement. The house, the cars, most of her business shares. She moved back to the village and took a job teaching at the local school. She attended addiction recovery meetings in the nearest town. Amina stayed in the village too, helping out Folake with the compound, learning about their family's spiritual practices, slowly rebuilding her connection to the ancestors through daily prayers and right living. The children visited on weekends. It was awkward at first. They didn't understand why their mother lived in a village now, why everything had changed. But gradually, Teniola started to smile again. Damilola began to relax. They learned to split time between their father's world and their mother's new humble life. Kule eventually remarried. Amina heard he was happy. 2 years passed, then 3. The emptiness in Amina's chest never fully disappeared, but she learned to live with it. She got a job at a local microfinance bank, helping women start small businesses. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt honest. One morning, she woke to find a single white hair growing exactly where one of her moles used to be. It was strange, impossible even, but when she showed Aunt Folake, the old woman smiled. "The ancestors are watching," she said. "They see your effort. Keep walking the path." Amina never became wealthy. The blessing never returned in the form she'd expected. But slowly, quietly, her life began to work. Opportunities appeared, small ones but real. She met a gentleman who worked as a mechanic. They married simply. She had a daughter. And when she held her baby for the first time, she saw 3 small moles on her child's collarbone, arranged like stars. Amina wept, not from loss, but from gratitude. Beside her, Aisha held her hand. Both sisters had lost everything, but in that loss, they'd found something more valuable than any stolen blessing. They'd found their way back to each other and to themselves. Moral lesson. Sometimes what we think we deserve blinds us to what we already have. Both sisters learned that blessings gained through deception, whether stealing someone's destiny or replacing their identity, will never bring peace. True prosperity comes not from what we take, but from what we build through honesty, sacrifice, and forgiveness. When we sever ourselves from our roots in pursuit of what isn't ours, we lose not just our blessings, but ourselves. The path back is long and humbling, but it's the only path that leads to real restoration. What the ancestors gave cannot be stolen without consequence, and what is caught away in haste takes a lifetime to restore. In the end, the greatest blessing isn't wealth or status, it's the peace that comes from living in truth. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and tell us what you learned in the comments below. Would you have forgiven your sister if you were Amina? Could you have given everything up like Aisha did? Drop your thoughts below.